Another attribute of complex systems are that they're non-normal in the statistical sense. So key attribute of complex system behavior is that it's macroscopic behavior. So imagine I've got a lot of independent elements. They collectively act to give a macroscopic behavior. That behavior is non-normal. And it's specifically because of this reason. It's very small inputs or disturbances can add up in a nonlinear way. So basically this is what someone mentioned, Malcolm Gladwell. He wrote a book called The Tipping Point. So this is precisely what he meant. So it seems like the system is sort of resilient to shocks, but it could add up. It's almost like the temper of a person, right? You keep sort of perturbing them, all of a sudden they blow up, right? Probably met someone like that. So systems are like that as well. Eventually they'll reach a tipping point and sort of go out of control. And afterwards, a seemingly insignificant disturbance, as I said, can result in an outsized impact. Another example here, classic example, is the stock market. So a lot of people think that if you look at stock market returns, let's say that I just look at the average daily fluctuation in a stock, I don't know, call it Walmart, which is a pretty low beta stock, meaning it doesn't have a lot of volatility relative to the general market. But if I do that over, say, a month, generally I will actually, if you plot a histogram, you'll get a normal curve. But on over long periods of time, it turns out the stock market is actually log normal, which means that it has what are also called fat tails. There was if you're familiar with the science of fractals, there was the scientist who did a lot of work in this area called his name was Mandelbrot, Benoit Mandelbrot. I know that he was at MIT at least as a lecturer, if not a professor, but nonetheless, he's originally from France. Did a lot of work in fractals and came up with the Mandelbrot set, which is a deeply rich set, even fractal set, even though has a very simple mathematical representation. Nonetheless, he got statistical data from the stock market and did some basically proved that the distribution, the PDF behind the stock market is not a stable, it's called a stable distribution. So like a normal distribution, it actually doesn't fit within the constraints of the central limit theorem, or very weakly so. It's pseudo-stable is what it's called, but it has very strange properties in terms of its variance, meaning that you will sometimes get stock market crashes like in 87 or 1929 that don't seem like they're very statistically likely. They definitely wouldn't be if the stock market returns are normal or the daily fluctuations were normal. That's because they're not. They're log normal. Why are they log normal? Partly because it's a complex system and you have a lot of human actors. So there's a lot of psychological inputs that can't be modeled very precisely. So now, talked about this a little bit or alluded to it, robustness. So complex systems can exhibit feedback and feed-forward effects. So a lot of times, as you know, in a control network, and this is including any type of network components in a system, a lot of times feedback can result in stabilization. Classic control example, feedback control would be like a thermostat. It gets hotter or colder, and the set point will cause it to either heat up or cool down. So that's feedback. Feed forward, though, leads to unstable behavior and controls, and you can have feed forward effects in controls, which can cause the system to spin out of control. As I mentioned, sometimes these are called tipping points, and another way to phrase this, as we'll see, is it's called points of self-organized criticality. The criticality or the critical point is the tipping point. So you can have systems that form these self-organized points of criticality. I'll give an example. So robustness then can be thought of as intentional slack, quote unquote, that's designed to absorb disturbances in complex systems up to a point. It can also be intentionally non-optimal. Now this is an important distinction. I have a system. It could very well be a complex system. I want to, based on our life cycle analysis, I want to do some optimization. We've sort of taken the classical viewpoint, which is that, I have a bunch of variables and I have a fairly well mathematically defined system. I can apply some of these optimization methods, whether it be calculus or even other more advanced methods, to do optimization. What I'm saying here is sort of in contrast to what we talked about before. If I have a complex system that meets the definitions that we said before, which is that sometimes I want to have intentional non-optimality in the sense that I don't want to make it too constrained. Like in this case, you can consider this a pretty optimized system. So this will become a little more clear as I go along why we want to do that.